What is going on, people? Welcome back to the channel. It's Slick Mason once again here. I just wanted to discuss another topic with you guys today here, which is the true reality of making it as a hip hop artist in Canada. Right. Pretty much the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because when I started out as an artist, I wish there's certain things that I knew when it came to making it as a hip hop artist in Canada, especially being an immigrant. I didn't understand that there was a difference between how artists were perceived in Canada itself and how they were perceived in other places as well, right? For example, the US market, right? I didn't understand the dynamics of the market and how people really responded to the music that they heard, right? Or the artists that they saw come on their screens. So I wanted to discuss that today so you guys don't make the same mistake as I made if you're starting out as a like an independent artist and you're trying to get noticed by the right crowd. So let's get into it. So the first point is that you have to consider the size of the sandbox, right? So Canada has roughly 40 million people spread across a massive geography. The US has over 330 million. Canada Canada's limited population creates an automatic ceiling on your growth, making the massive US market a necessity for scaling a real career, right? So just think about it or picture it, right? The amount of time it takes you to travel across Canada and the cost to actually travel is so expensive compared to what it is in the US or even in Europe for that matter, right? And the way the masses of people are spread across the country is crazy because you have a population of 40 million people spread over a large landmass, right? So you have to spend more money to travel to play to a very small crowd compared to what you would have gotten in the US, for example, with 330 million people there, right? So if you do the math in your head, you can actually see that you would make more money playing in the US live, right? And for example, here in Thunder Bay, where I'm located, you could drive 7 hours and get to Minneapolis real quick, right? You're across the border. Now flights are cheaper, right? Even people prefer to just drive down from here to fly out of there because it's cheaper to fly out of there than it is to fly to Toronto and then another hub like Montreal and then go to Europe and then go to the US or whatever it is, right? That's something to consider here. Another thing, or the second point, would be the validation loop, right? So the Canadian industry often ignores local talent until they've secured a cosign from the US, turning the export first strategy into an essential branding hack, right? So I'll give you guys an example. Drake, when he started here, because I was pretty much coming up at the same time with one of my homies. We started a group called Light It Up, or LIU for short, right? And we wanted to, you know, make it at the same time that Drake and them were coming up, right? There were also some other artists during that time that were vying for that spot where they'd get noticed from the Canadian market. So when Drake was coming up, he didn't really pop off until you had labels in the US just fighting for him, just trying to sign this guy, right? So until he got that co-sign from Young Money and Lil Wayne and them and Baby, right? It wasn't sorry and Birdman. It wasn't until they did that, recognized him, right, and showed him as their flagship artist that that's when people actually started recognizing him and listening to his music, right? So the cosign is something that's important, but in order to get that cosign, you got to at least link up with some of those US artists, right, and try to make it happen, right? Now Drake actually had ties to the US as well, right? He was able to get some kind of connections over there to help him out because he'd already had some kind of celebrity with Degrassi, that show Degrassi, right? So he was able to go over there in that US market and make some moves. And then once he connected with the right people, right, dude started popping off. So that's a strategy that a lot of artists have followed as a blueprint in the past, right? Is that they've gone to the US, and it's been a popular thing that they go to the US and then they pop off, right? So the third thing is that there's a touring nightmare, right? So touring in Canada is a logistical and financial drain, whereas the US offers a denser, more profitable network of cities to sustain your tour, right? So again, I don't need to explain that one again because I've already talked about it. It's expensive to travel across Canada compared to the US or Europe for that matter. Um, Point number four would be the CanCon ceiling, right? So relying on domestic regulations like CanCon can make your brand feel too insular. So you must aim for a world-class standard to compete globally, right? So that one I won't really go too deep into because I don't think that's such a major point, right? However, you guys can look it up and try to see what it means. Actually, let's look it up right now to make sure, I'm not butchering the definition of what exactly this is. Let's actually get this keyboard here. CanCon. Define that. Right, so I'll read it to you. So CanCon is short for Canadian Content, refers to a set of regulations enforced by the CRTC, the Canadian government's broadcast regulator, that requires radio and television stations to play a minimum percentage of music and programming created by Canadians. Right, so to qualify for CanCon, a song typically needs to meet at least two of the MAPL criteria. Right, so the music was composed entirely by a Canadian, the lyrics or performance are by a Canadian, right, and so on and so forth. But you guys can go online and read that yourself. So if you're relying on those domestic regulations, right, it feels too insular, right? So you aim for world-class standard and you'd rather compete globally than locally, right, in that sense. The next thing, the blueprint trigger, right? So stop waiting to be discovered at home. Treat the U.S. as your primary battlefield to force the Canadian industry to start to finally take notice, right? So that's pretty much the blueprint. It's always been that, right? Until further notice, right? That's what it is at this point, is that you have to go over there, make the U.S. notice you, or you get noticed in Europe, or right somewhere where there's a huge population, right? Even now, these Afrobeat artists actually getting noticed in Africa. Now, there are some that do get noticed in Africa and they blow up over there, but then it takes time for them to actually blow up on a global scale because the U.S. is still one of the most dominant markets when it comes to music, right? So if you are a rapper, especially, and you're doing hip hop, the best thing would be to try to break into that U.S. market, right, or break into the European market, so it's easier for people to be receptive to you from other places, right? That way you can continue to build your brand, right, and build it much faster than you would if you stayed in Canada, for example, right? So those are the points I wanted to discuss today on that topic. You guys let me know. Actually, I'm sorry for the light coming in over there. Right? I'm trying to block it with my head actually. So I would suggest you guys put some opinions that you have in the comments there. Right? Maybe there's a point I missed, or maybe you disagree. Maybe you think that you can stay in Canada and still make it. Right? I'd like to know. Maybe there's a way to do that, but until further notice, the popular opinion right now is that you'd have to move to the U.S. or at least break into the U.S. market in order for other markets to start to recognize you and take you seriously, right? So speaking of that, actually, I do have a fundraiser that I'm trying to put together where the money we collect from that fundraiser is going towards shows that I could put on for you guys, for my subscribers, and also people who like my music in certain areas, be it anywhere in the world, right? So I'm trying to target two markets first, which is the Canadian market and the U.S. market primarily because most of my viewers are from those particular regions, right? So what we're gonna do is we're going to put on some shows. Whenever we get to a show, the first 50 tickets that are purchased, we're going to give those people packages with autographed merch, right, that put together myself, right? And also, actually, I'm gonna make sure it's great quality merch, right? So that's something that I'm working on right now. I'll show you guys the samples of that stuff as I come around with it and I develop it, right? So I'm working with a local company here in town to get that done. The other thing as well is that in that package, with the branded merch, you're also gonna get a thank you note from me, right? A personal written note, pretty much letting thanking you for supporting me and the channel, and knowing that this kind of support is there also would be good to encourage other artists who are trying to make it without a music label, because my whole thing is I want to stay authentic and still be able to make it without a music label, right? Based on my fan base that actually wants to contribute towards this type of content and my music, and making sure that we can encourage each other, right? So to continue pushing, right? So my whole brand is also a motivational type of brand. It's called The Worst Enemy. So the whole concept is that you are your own worst enemy, right? You are the only person standing in your way of your progress, right? So I want to make sure that I could reach people on that level where they can be motivated to actually become better, right? Be better people for themselves, and then level up, right, in their lives and continue to achieve things at the highest level. Now, yeah, you'll be getting that package there, right? And then the other thing I'm going to do is put more money into creating more of this content, so buying equipment for it. We'll also have some funds that we could put towards paying artists that open for during the shows that I put on in the different cities that I go to, right? So we'll try and see if we could source some information from the fans, right? Some information from the subscribers, right, and the people watching, to let me know who are the underground artists you have that haven't been noticed yet, right? And then we could take a listen to their music, right, and see if it's stuff that we could rock with, right? So if we like the music, hey, we'll reach out to the artists, we'll go meet them, right? We'll create some content with them and also have them open at the show. But I'm not gonna be one of those people that comes to a town and then uses the artists there to get people to the show, right? And then have them get screwed over at the end of the day. There's a lot of artists out there doing that too. I'll probably have a topic that I'll talk about later on about those scams, right? So there's a lot of artists that like to use other artists and manipulate people in this industry. You got to watch out for them. But anyways, what I'm going to do is make sure those artists are paid if they're opening up for me. You don't have to run around and get and sell tickets to people, or worry about how much you're going to make at the door or whatever. No, I'll pay you straight up. Give us the best show you could give us, because your talent is one that people need to see and they need to hear about, right? So I'm trying to be as transparent as possible. I'm trying to be as helpful as possible as I can to this culture, right, and this genre of music that I love so much. So please subscribe, like, and share this video. Give us a shout out, right? Try to let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know what content you want me to make. Listen to some of my music on my channel as well. I think I've been rambling on for a while here, but I apologize for that. Just yeah, let me know what you think in the comments, and we'll talk later. Peace.